is not talking about the issue itself, that immediately puts me off with people if they can't be polite. It's part of my mother's voice in the back of my head growing up. And, to really present, a lot of, reasons for your opposition or your support of the bill. I just name calling and, just trashing the legislature in particular, I don't respond to. So that automatically puts up a wall for me.
You want to ask one more, Mary?
Yeah, one of the things that I notice about our legislators in Congress and here both is that you have to be Renaissance people. You really do. They have to know a lot about a lot of things. You may not have known how the mental health system worked. Her background was education and computers, basically, and seniors, not the criminal justice system, perhaps. So what impresses me is the amount of material. So with that, my question I have is, how much does your party's position or your caucus, they call it a caucus, and I believe in Congress they call it the conference, the Republican caucus, the Democratic caucus, how much do they help you to formulate your views? How much do they control your views? What happens if you go along with them? What happens if you don't go along with your caucus? Remember I said when we started out, sometimes they both had the experience of voting with their caucus and not with their the majority of their party. And so that's a curiosity I think a lot of people have. How much in control, how much is the party in control? And then along with that is about the PAC donation, lobbyist organizations. How much control does money have on how you vote?
20 questions.
In terms of how your caucus helps you, I'm a member of the Democratic caucus, and we are in the minority. So when we have bills coming out every week before we start session on Tuesday, we have caucus meetings, and our leadership runs through all the bills that we're anticipating to vote on. Now, these have all gone through committee first, right? Or generally, yeah. I guess in lame duck, that doesn't always happen, is from what I hear. There's been a hearing, there's been information on it. And so we talk through the overall issues as a caucus, and we talk about what I would call allied organizations, how they feel about this, so we know who our traditional supporters are. So for the Democratic caucus, a lot of it is the public education, the labor organizations, some business, so we walk through that, what are their thoughts? The AAUW might be another one, and it gives you insight. Now, then we also have policy experts that are employed by the caucus, and so we have a gentleman named Dan, who's our education policy analyst. He's written up a whole analysis on these bills, the pros, the cons, the cost to the state or to the local governments. And so there's a lot of detailed information, and it's very, very important when you don't sit on the committee that the bill came out of. So I go through the analysis of that. I have to admit, I don't read a lot of the actual language of the bills because it is all in legalese, and that is not my background. So the analysis from the policy people are so important to me to make my decision. Now, in terms of the influence of the caucus on my actual vote, there are very few times this year where we have, as a group, said, we really should stand up as a caucus and vote for this or vote against it. But for the most part, it's like, here's the information, here's the things you should think about before you decide to vote, but vote how your constituents are, want you to vote, and think of that and think about the ramifications for the entire state. So a good example for me would have been on the school budget this year. So overall, the school aid budget was pretty good. It was pretty good. We, every school district at least got some small increase. However, for a lot of Oakland County districts, it was small. It was very small. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. So for my district, I was a little disappointed, but overall, I had to say it was good for the state, so I voted for that. But that would be an example of what we kind of go through for that. You also have influence by the different lobbying groups, and I wouldn't say control, but I'd say influence on the lobby groups, because they have full-time people that do nothing but watch legislators and bills coming up, and are you someone that will be open to both sides of the issue? And so they'll call meetings with you, they'll bring constituents up with them to talk about the issues, and that's where I think everyday people, their opinions are outweighed by the lobby corps. If you have more money behind you, you have the resources to bring people to Lansing and talk directly with the legislators. That's why it's so important to make those phone calls, send those emails, go to the coffees, because your opinions could be outshadowed very easily. If that's all we hear, what's coming from the organization, that's going to have a lot of influence on us. So that's why the power of the individual, to me, is so important. And I think about, I go and I look in the email boxes that we have, and I look how many people were against third grade reading was a big one that just came up 2 weeks ago. That was really important to me. The energy package that are coming up, I get tons of emails for and against that. But I look at that because it has to outweigh. Right now we have a huge lobbying effort by the energy companies, so we hear from them all the time. And that's why we need to hear from you. So I went on a little long for that though.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions to answer, but just to give you, my experience is much like Chris's experience. Is the caucus provides you, when we have our meetings in the month, every Tuesday morning I have a caucus meeting with all the Republicans, and there's 61 now. 61. I'm one of 9 women. So we have a meeting in caucus, and they talk about, these are the bills that are coming up. Do you have any questions? And the bill, whoever's issuing the bill, or somebody's there to speak to the bill and give some reasoning, and then it's up to you and your staff really to do the research on the bill so that you're best prepared when you come to the floor to vote on that particular bill. There's a tremendous amount of reading that needs to take place, and it's constant. It's like every night homework and every day homework. You're constantly bombarded. So not only are you bombarded, like Chris said, are you bombarded with information from your caucus, but the other interested parties to the question. And I'll give you an example of one thing that's just made my eyes glaze over, and that is biosimilars and biologics and interchangeable medications. Okay, biosimilars and biologics. Biosimilars are a part of biologics, and it just makes my eyes glaze over. I listen to the pharmaceutical, the pharmaceutical departments, I listen to doctors, I listen to all of them, and I'm still undecided as to which bill, because there's competing bills in committee. And the competing bills, one's introduced by a freshman doctor, and the other one is introduced by a gentleman that's been there for 3 years, that has been working on this for 3 years plus. So I'm torn, I trust them both. And so I have to listen to everything, and I have the staff listen to everything, and I even went so far as to ask my husband, which really I don't like to do, and I've asked my pharmacist, I've asked my own pharmacist. Today on the way over here, I stopped at the pharmacy and I said, okay, give me your take on this. I want to know locally what the pharmacies here think, So I'm greatly influenced by what people in my district think. I'm influenced also by my caucus, but the caucus really is very fair. They really don't tell me how to vote. I know by the people that I trust and how they're voting, and that does sort of influence me somewhat. And the lobbyists, it's unfortunate that lobbyists are demonized. We've demonized lobbyists, but let me give you an example of something that happened, in my case anyway, that we can't be up to speed on every single. It's best if you're a state rep that has a little bit of information about a lot of subjects. We can't, we're not scientists or nuclear physicists or whatever. We're trying to collect as many facts as we can and then make a measured and a logical conclusion about which way we should vote after studying everything. So lobbyists come to us, and they really do tell us the pros and cons. And lobbyist organizations are, there's multi-client businesses. They're multi-client businesses in Lansing, and they have a number of clients that they work with. Virtually every large company or even small companies has a lobbyist in Lansing. They're there because they're specialists. And for example, I have a bill that was introduced by a lobbying firm to me, and the lobbyist is a veterinarian. He's a veterinarian, and he is lobbying for veterinarians in Michigan. And what he wanted his bill to say is that the state of Michigan should require all veterinarian techs as well as veterinarians to have continuing education. Michigan is the only state that doesn't require continuing education for their veterinarians and their vet techs. And they say, this veterinarian and other vets said, we're the first line of defense between the public and what's going on in the animal world or the insect world or whatever out there. West Nile virus is something that came about, and veterinarians need to be up on the latest technology and the latest things. So we really need for our veterinarians in our state to be up to speed on the latest and greatest information. And some of them that have been vets for a very long time really feel this is unnecessary. But Michigan is the only state. So I introduced a bill. There were some things that were beyond my comprehension at the time when I introduced the bill. It made sense to me because I know almost every other profession has continuing education. You teachers and everything, you have continuing education. So it made sense. And I introduced the bill to require, and then licensing and regulation department got involved because they say if you're going to require that as a part of the license that you have continuing education, who's going to check on that? If we're going to have to hire another person to check everybody, it's going to cost more money. So you're going to have to raise the license fees for both the techs and for veterinarians. So then that created another whole discussion that would take place. So finally, we did that, and we are going to be allowing that to happen, and we're only going to do random checks. We're going to do random checks, so they're not going to have to hire one whole person just to check statewide. But that'll give you an idea. That was brought forward by a lobbyist who happened to be a veterinarian. And very often the people that bring forward the ideas and the issues that are lobbyists are also, are former members of whatever that group was, teachers or, they aren't demons or evil. They're providing us with information, and they're pointing out shortcomings in certain legislation. And sometimes we've introduced legislation and we passed legislation that wasn't the intent. We have to go back and fix it. So sometimes that's what they bring forward also. So maybe that'll give you an idea of how the process works. I don't know if there was other things.
Are we ready for some questions out there? We're running a little bit late.
Is Janet still here?
Yeah. I see a hand up over here. Go ahead.
Do you want to take a mic around, Beth?
Yeah.
And I want to apologize for saying you're certifiably crazy to both representatives. Well, it's a crazy profession and a crazy life. However, the reason I want to apologize, number one, is none of us are certifiably crazy, but also I want to encourage you and those you know to consider running. And if I tell you you have to be crazy to do it, you might not want to. So really, I hope that we can help you see that the representatives and senators and are regular, everyday people that just care and want to make a difference, and that could be you too. So.
And when, I might say on all the tables I put